What's going on, guys? Today on Help Me Preach, I have a video I'm sure you'll be interested in. It is how do I help my church to grow? And so I'm going to give you my number one tip and how to go about that. All right. All right, guys. So the number one tip for helping your church grow: follow up with your visitors. I know that sounds just super simple, but sometimes it's the simple things that people don't do very well. And so following up with visitors, that's what we're going to talk about and how to do that better. So obviously, with a church to grow and to add members, there are many things that would go into it. There's a matter of door knocking and any number of things. Studying with fellow family members, co-workers, all that kind of thing. But when it comes to your visitors and following up with them, just realize this is the absolute minimum. But not only is it the absolute minimum, it's also your best pool for contacts. And yet, when I've gone through and I've looked at churches or been a part of churches in the past, it's one of those things that it's just not done very well. And so that's why we want to really try to do that better. So one thing that I thought was interesting whenever I had heard this idea brought up before is that a buddy of mine was talking about one of the elders where he was working at. And he was talking about an elder describing this in regards to visitors and how he viewed visitors. And I think it's very good to have this in front of us. As he said, when visitors are visiting, it's like fish jumping into the boat. Now, we understand, the gospel in Luke about going to be fishers of men and all that when he was talking about the apostles. And so, obviously, that's getting in the boat and going out there, right? And so, the picture, though, of a visitor coming to you is, in fact, like he said, it's like them coming to the actual boat. And in fact, this is something that the scriptures talk about in 1 Corinthians 14 and also in James chapter 2. He talks about the fact that there's visitors that would be in your assemblies. And so we might want to try to handle ourselves properly in that and then try to follow up with them. All right, so tips. How do I go about this better? All right, number one, get all of their information. Now, I know that sounds very simple, but again, like I said, sometimes it's the simple things that don't get done. So, I'll tell you one thing that I can tell about churches in regards to their visitors is I can tell if they're interested or not based off of what is on their visitor's card, if they have visitor's cards, and how good they are. So, when you think about a visitor's card, or any number, whatever you want to call it, a guest card, I don't know necessarily what you may describe it as. It needs to have some pretty basic information, and you need to be getting it. So, there are people that have visitors' cards, and the cards are there, but they're sitting in the back of a pew. One church that I know, and in fact we do this here, is they have a clipboard, and they take the cards to the visitors. Because I'll tell you right now, if you have your visitors there, and you are expecting them to go through and fill out the visitor card and put it into a plate or hand it to a member, I'll tell you the people who are going to do that. They're going to already be Christians. The people that are not already Christians, that are visitors to your church, they most likely are probably not going to do that. They need to be basically encouraged to write down the information. Okay, so get the information. That includes phone number, address, especially address, and email address. So that's going to be very important for our next tip. All right, the next thing is follow up. Follow up. And what I mean by this is, let's say you're the preacher, right? You probably are. Follow up within 24 hours. This means things like sending a text message, sending a email, giving a phone call, something like that. Just have it on one of the things that you do Monday morning. You come in, have your visitor card, do that right then. And so that's really good. I know a buddy of mine, whenever he talks about following up with visitors, what he lays out is he actually doesn't do anything the first week. he's trying to give them an opportunity to see if they'll come back the next week. And so we'll talk about second-time visitors here in just a minute. But if you want to do that, I'm sure that's fine. But I would try to do maybe a combination of the two. Maybe shoot them a text. Maybe send them an email. Tell them how thankful you are that they came. Or go visit them or something like that. But just have some process for following up. Because this is the time where churches just can drop the ball. They have somebody visit. They come in. Everything went great. But yet, they never went to talk to that person. They never invited them over. They never went to go see them or anything like that. And I'm telling you, it is a really, really good idea to go, and maybe you're in a bigger city. Maybe the idea of just showing up at somebody's house to stop in and say hi is kind of a strange deal. Well, why don't you take the opportunity to call them and see if they would be fine with getting together for dinner this week. Maybe Tuesday or Thursday, whatever day. And just have them over or go meet somewhere and try to get to know them better. I think there's a lot of value in that. So, all right, so second tip, follow up within 24 hours, but especially just follow up in general. A third thing that I've seen that's really good is get members writing cards. We have some ladies here that do a great job of that, and it's very, very simple, and they really love doing it. But just go through, get the information, and then write the card. Now, what are you going to include in the card? Well, it's things like, thanks for being there, right? But I'm telling you, if you can get specific, how about you mention things about them and their attitude that are very positive and very good? Or how about their children, and mention every single person in the family? Like, the more specific you can get, the better. And especially preachers, I think this is one of those times where you can use kind of the preacher card that allows you to have more influence with people. And so, again, maybe that's part of your follow-up. It's on Monday you write cards and you ship them out. Or maybe Sunday afternoon or whatever. And you have them in the mail so they're there on Monday or Tuesday. The value of that, though, is again getting more people involved. So when you have the visitor cards on the clipboard, or you have the ladies or other members writing cards, you're building that culture of evangelism where it's not just you doing the work. It's everybody realizing, hey, there's somebody here and we need to talk to them and we want to follow up and see if they would be interested in studying. Fourth, and we kind of talked about this already, but go visit if it's appropriate. Okay, so sometimes this is hard. You'll have somebody that writes their information down and they give you a P.O. box number. Well, guess what? You're not able to follow up with them very much in the sense of going to visit them. And then you'll have other times where maybe it would just be kind of an awkward deal. But I know sometimes people think, man, it would be so weird to just show up at somebody's house. But you realize people do this a lot. They have door knocking and all that kind of thing. And it would seem weird to go and visit somebody. But guess what? They just came to your church Sunday. And for you to come and say, hey, it was really great to see you, and to talk for like 5-10 minutes, is not going to be as weird as you think it is. And so you can give them a card, you can give them some Bible class material, you could even talk to them about getting together for dinner or something like that. And so I think that's very, very important. And so how do I do that? Get somebody to go and visit with you, or maybe you have to just go by yourself, but just stop in. And some of that may be kind of like, you got to be kind of careful with it. If you're going to a lady's house, don't go inside. We'll talk about this in another video. Never, ever, ever be alone with a woman that is not your wife or your grandma. Just don't do it. Our culture's crazy. Sexual allegations all over the place. Just don't do it. But when you're thinking about who to go visit, if you have somebody with you, go in and sit down, because most likely they'll let you in. Otherwise, just stay outside. Or if it's a man or something like that, then just go stop by. I mean, it's really not that hard. So there's a lot of times where that may be inappropriate, but I'm telling you, it's way more appropriate than people think, and there's a lot of value in that. Again, that's one of those times where people can say, hey, the preacher came by to see me. That's one of those times where being a preacher has its perks. So use it to your advantage. All right, last thing. Then ask people to study, okay? Don't just go with no intention. Don't just go and say, hey, good to meet you, good to follow up. Why don't you ask them, hey, I've got this study. For us, maybe it's a 1-hour presentation or something else. Hey, would you be interested in going through this? This is something that I go through just to introduce people to the Bible and to give them an overall perspective. Or maybe, again, follow up with a meal or inviting them over to the house. Here's the thing. Go with intention. Invite them to a study. Invite them with a purpose. Invite them to something. Don't just stop in and just say hi. So that's pretty important. So there's a lot of single-time visitors that are going to come through. What you're trying to do, ultimately, is trying to get people to repeat visit. And you can look at plenty of research on this and all this, but there's like enormous research that if a person visits more than once, their percentage of actually being involved in a part of your church, like, skyrockets. A lot of people come in one time, it either didn't go well, or they're there for some other reason, and they have really no intention of coming back. Guess what? You'd want to try to follow up with them. Those are the people that are probably not going to be involved. So try to get them back more than once. And so you do that, though, by having your people on board with trying to get the mission out to reach people. Your services are run in a way that are conducive to try to reach people. And your facility doesn't look like a disaster where the bomb went off. Try to think about it from the visitor's perspective. In fact, that's 1 Corinthians 14, if you really want to lay it out. And we may do a video on that another time. But here's the thing. We all know the power of first impressions. First impressions are really, really hard to get over. And we need to set that up if we're ever going to be able to follow up with people. And your first impression is just absolutely critical. And so use that to your advantage. Use that for value. And use that in the way that would obviously be most conducive to try to reach people. All right. Hopefully that has some value to you. If you have any other questions, drop those in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. And if you have maybe some other advice, something that I have overlooked, drop those in the comments. If you have anything to add, feel free to add it. All right, appreciate it. Y'all have a great day.